Now we have a panel discussion on reimagining digital commerce in India with open network for digital commerce. I would now like to invite Mohd Ujaley, Senior Assistant Editor, ETGovernment, to moderate the discussion.
Hello and very warm welcome to this special panel discussion focused on the topic of reimagining digital commerce in India with open network for digital commerce. As you know, the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Ministry of Commerce, has initiated a project on open network for digital commerce. The project aims at promoting open network developed on open source methodology using open specification and open network protocol independent of any specific platforms. It is being said that once finalized, the expectation is that it will digitize the entire value chain, standardize operation, promote inclusion of supplier, improve efficiency in logistics, and ultimately enhance the customer experience. Also, the fact that this platform is also being touted as a platform wherein the current system is more towards the platform-centric model to moving it toward an open network model. And it is also touted as what UPI is to the digital payment domain. If implemented, ONDC will be to e-commerce in India. But it is easier said than done. And that is why we have very enlightened panelists, most of them part of the advisory panel that the government has set up to enlighten on these, the benefit, the challenges, and the progress that India has made so far on this platform. Let me introduce our each panelist. I am today joined by Dr. Suresh Sharma, Chief Executive Officer, National Health Authority, Mr. Anil Agrawal, Additional Secretary, Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade with the Government of India, Mr. Arvind Gupta, Co-founder and Head Digital India Foundation. He was also he's also the former CEO of MyGov platform. Mr. Suresh Sethi, Managing Director and CEO of Protean e-Governance Technology. Earlier, this organization was known as NSDL e-Governance Infrastructure Ltd. I'm also joined by Ms. Anjali Bansal, Founder and Chairperson, Avaana Capital, and Mr. T. Koshy, Chief Executive Officer, Open Network for Digital Commerce. Thank you, everybody, for taking out time and joining us for this discussion today. Let me begin with R.S. Sharma, sir. Sir, what we are noticing that the reports that we have been able to read out so far, and some of the meeting of the advisory board has happened. Based on that, we realized that ONDC will change the fundamental structure of the e-commerce market, which is currently from the current platform-centric model to an open network model. I would like to understand from you in totality your views, especially why do we need this platform, and in long run, what kind of economic benefit it is going to do to our economy, and also the fact that the government has been focusing a lot on indigenization project, not only in defense, but in different sectors. So what relation this particular platform has with that?
No, thank you very much, Mohd Ujaley, for that question. I think it's very important one. Let me not go straight to the question, but the very basic, sort of background of that. Now, India has created a number of public goods, digital public goods, and now we have experience of actually creating fundamentally different and fundamentally innovative, digital stuff like Aadhaar, UPI, even recently COVID, for example. So we have huge experience in these kinds of platforms. And these are essentially building blocks for any other platform or any other system you build. I mean, so that's one part which we should understand. And we have now become very confident of actually creating such large scale interoperable systems which are based on open APIs, open standards, and largely on open source. So that's one part which we have to understand. And now what we are thinking is essentially, let us apply this whole design principle. Let's apply this paradigm of digital public goods and putting them together into various domains. So, for example, you must have heard I had the NHA, and NHA has now embarked on National Digital Health Mission, which is called Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. And essentially, that is also based on the same fundamentals. We are having UHI, Unified Health Interface, in place of UPI. And the whole idea is to create an interoperable network situation. So we are distinguishing it from a platform to a network, whereby we are making everything interoperable. So there's the provider side. Provider means, let's say, digital commerce space, you can say there's a seller side. There are guys who are selling, and there are purchaser sides. And basically, they don't need to be on same platform, and they can be on different platform. Now, this actually has a huge network effect. So forget about the fact that, the existing platforms, whatever problems they might have. What we are proposing is a solution which actually exponentially, creates there are no entry barriers for anybody now. In this open platform, there are no entry barriers for purchasers to use a particular application, or the seller to use a particular application, and this network is resolved. So in a way, you can say this network is essentially a kind of protocols which we are evolving on top of internet. Internet is based on the TCP/IP and other protocols, which actually makes it possible for disparate machines to come together and communicate with each other. I am sitting with a desktop, you are sitting with maybe an Apple iPad or whatever. Now everybody is talking to everybody, and this is made possible only because of the interoperable nature of TCP/IP. It is agnostic to the machines. Similarly, we are going to create a system whereby, based on these protocols, we will be able to make an interoperable network of sellers, buyers, and other kinds of things. That's what is the proposal. And we are not saying that it will happen tomorrow. It will take a little while. UPI also did take a couple of years to mature into it, but we are very confident that this will happen. And if this happens, it will be a win-win-win for everybody.
Right. Mr. Agrawal, would you like to add, especially on the fact that we do not see actually these kind of platforms being built anywhere in the world, and this will be very unique, similar to what unique we have done with UPI and Aadhaar. But my question is, do we really need to build it? Because you already have, platform in form of some of the private companies. Can't we actually bring in some element of policy, and possibly, if we have to tape something, possibly we can do that via the policy route?
Very good afternoon, everyone. Building upon what Mr. Sharma just said, these closed platforms, they have their own issues. There are proprietary systems. Like, for example, if we were to get a trader onboarded onto one particular platform, there is a process on which they get onboarded. The way they do the KYC, the way you will take up the catalog, the way you put up the inventory and all that. So there is one process. Now, if the same seller was to go to the next platform, he has to follow a second process. If he has to go to a third platform, it has to follow a third process. Now imagine the banking system before the UPI. Now, one bank was to transact with another bank, it has to establish a two-way communication with that particular bank, and with the next bank, and with the next bank, and with the next bank. So if you have 100 banks, each bank has to establish two-way relationship for financial transaction with each of those separate banks to be able to do this. What UPI has done, they have standardized, the way information is to be exchanged between banks. Now that changes the entire paradigm.
Right.
See, you have the emails, for example. You have Gmail.
Right.
There is an entire proprietary protocol, proprietary platform that Gmail has built. There is a proprietary platform that Yahoo has built, a proprietary platform on Outlook, for example, or so many other email service providers. Each of them have specific features, specific services that they offer to the users. But you are able to, they are all connected with each other. So you are able to send mails and exchange information between any of these platforms. That is going to be the beauty of this platform. And how did this idea come? Important. If I just give you that context, this will clarify a lot of things. In 2020, when the country was in a state of lockdown, so we were trying to connect the suppliers with citizens who were entrapped in containment zones of COVID. Now, we realized that if we put up one particular trader on one platform, that was not enough. The same trader had to be on 5 or 6 different platforms to be able to get the buyers who are all there in the same containment zones on different platforms. Then we realized it's very important for standardization of the entire process of commerce, right from cataloging, inventory management, how do you search, how do you put up an order, payment problem we have already sorted, right? So the issue here is when there are platforms, as they grow bigger, we have seen all kinds of issues which come and oligarchy kind of a situation. Everybody has their own proprietary processes. They collect huge amounts of personal data. And then with that data, they will have whole lot of different practices which are not in consumer interest. So once you have this kind of interoperable architecture, it actually helps everyone.
Right, absolutely. I'll come back to you again. I'll go to Mr. Arvind Gupta. Mr. Gupta, from a policy point of view, you work a lot in this particular area. Would you like to add to what Dr. Sharma and Mr. Agrawal said, and especially on the fact that you already have some of the existing platforms? There could be some of the issue, especially on a monopoly part with some of the bigger platform. But why do we really need? I mean, Dr. Sharma has really explained that it's a network, but can we do without ONDC actually?
Now, that's a good question. Can we do without ONDC? Yes, you can always do without UPI. Life would be little miserable and not fair to everybody, right? I can go on and give a lot of examples. Can you do without Gmail? You had Hotmail before that, and you had Yahoo Mail before that, and tons of others. New innovation needs to keep happening. And when new innovation keeps happening, it challenges the current players. So let me just step back a little bit and see what our fellow panelists, Dr. Sharma, Mr. Agrawal have already said. I won't repeat that. Number one, we are expanding the market with the ONDC. It's not replacing somebody. So, and India has, hardly touched the tip of the online retail segment. Hardly, out of the probably 80 crore users, hardly 8 to 10 crore users would have ever bought something on a e-commerce, e-retail kind of a platform. And for us, the digital commerce definition is just not retail; it's also mobility, it's also food. So because finally we're setting up a network, as Dr. Sharma explained. So that network can serve anybody. Number one. So number one, we have to understand we are not trying to replace or compete with the current players. We're trying to expand the market. And how does market expansion happen? Market expansion happens because you bring a disruption which is very, very low cost, which everybody can afford. And that is a story that SMEs can afford. That's the story that every retailer in India can afford. So that's a number. That's the second point I had. The third point is, what kind of interventions are required? You talked about policy interventions. One is you can have a policy intervention, what was the question that you asked to Mr. Agrawal, or you can have a technology intervention or you can have a market intervention.
Right.
ONDC is a combination of a technology intervention, which will really work in terms of backing up the policy and the markets. But it's not a policy intervention. It's not a purely market intervention. It's a technology intervention which will support any other thing that will happen. And lastly, I want to say is that power of disintermediation, the unbundling power that everybody's talked about. Now today, a buyer and a seller can enforce their own. A seller can enforce his or her own rules. They don't have to go by the rules of a chosen few, and that rules will then get translated into working with a logistics partner and a seller and a buyer. So and that's about it. So you are actually unbundling and really benefiting from this whole concept that Dr. Sharma also explained, the whole internet effect, which is really unbundling and disintermediation of this whole process. While the internet promised the disintermediation, what has happened over the last 30 years is we have actually got more gatekeeping to a few, and that this actually removes the gatekeeping power and gives the retailers, the buyers a choice, and that is the little bit of the market part that I'm saying. But the technology part is the power of unbundling all of this and really implementing a new structure. Last point I will make before I hand over to you is that you said nowhere in the world this is happening. Now that should not be the rule for India. The rule for India is we should set the trends for the rest of the world, especially when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution. And that's what we have done. That's what we have shown, that India has not a top-down approach when it comes to digitization. It's a bottom-up approach. Dr. Sharma is sitting here. He's I call him the father of the CoWIN and the digital public goods movement in India. You see, CoWIN today, you can access the certificate on a WhatsApp.
Right.
Now, that's the power that every person can be included. It's completely offline inclusion. You can walk into a vaccine center and still do your registration. Whereas you can be using the CoWIN as a platform, and you can go to the website and do your things, use third-party application. Now, that has made us a very technologically superior to many other societies, getting a simple certificate and on a fly at any point in time. Now, and that is scaled up to population levels. So when you're talking about why other countries are not doing it, other societies are not doing it, whether India is prepared to do it, I think the answer lies that India is leading this effort. It's not a private money-making effort. It's a public effort. It's a digital public goods. And I think the rest of the world is watching this space as India leads.
Right. Absolutely. Mr. Suresh Sethi, would you like to add, especially on the part what Mr. Arvind Gupta was saying, that this network platform is not only about the market or something else. We are creating a technology platform, a technology network platform, and it will, at the end of the day, it will also give you a lot of visibility across what is really happening, what is being sold, who is selling, how our MSMEs are performing.
Thanks for the question, Mohammed. I think you heard from the earlier panelists, and I'll just extend that line of thought and what they were calling out. So I think, first of all, maybe language and terminology becomes very relevant. What ONDC today represents is not a platform. It is actually protocols or standards through which you are enabling interoperability. Now, if you heard the examples, and I think earlier you heard, different type of email engines, but their ability to talk to each other was based on standards which got created. I would, in a way, call it that it is the internetalization of the entire thing. So it's an open ecosystem in which various players can come and play. And what does that lead to? It leads to democratic access, and it creates market access. So as a consumer, I need not be any longer restricted to 1 or 2 or 3 applications, and therefore go into a walled garden where I can only access merchants sitting on that platform. But I can use multiple applications to discover goods or services that I'm seeking to procure. And similarly, on the supply side, likewise, you are again opening up the system where you are making it inclusive. So I think India, by virtue of the fact that we call it as digital public infrastructure, we are purely calling out that this is all about inclusion. everybody getting an equal and democratic access to the ecosystem that is out there. So that is the first point I would like to put on the table. The second point, as you said, is that this is all going to give us a lot of information to help people. Today, when we look at the MSME sector, as their transactions become online, their ability to use transactional data to even create, ability to secure further working capital or lending capabilities. So there are various models which will play on top of it. So at the grassroots level, you are talking about standards for interoperability. You're talking about bringing the market access into play and bringing buyers and sellers together. And you are talking about digital exchange of services, placing of orders, catalogs, everything becoming digital. Your entire logistics becomes actually a part of it, because when we talk about Kirana, it is not just about procuring, it is also about delivering. So all those pieces coming together, and that data that gets created can create more innovation and outcomes out of it. So I would leave it with that. And
yeah, Ms. Anjali, would you like to add, especially on what other speakers have spoken, especially around ONDC as a thought process, why we are having it? I've asked a couple of questions why we should not have it, but if you could add something.
I want to touch on two things, so many wonderful speakers have gone ahead of me, so I will not repeat that. But 2 points to make. One is specifically this notion of, should it happen elsewhere in the world before India does it? I think India is already the world leader in creating public digital goods. There is no other country in the world where we have 1.3 billion people with a unique digital biometric ID. It gives dignity of identity to our citizens. There is also no other country in the world where there is a public-private partnership model available for payments. Absolutely easy to use, ubiquitous payments where you and I can actually transact with each other without having to go through a different platform or needing to enroll somewhere first, right? So it's completely open. It again gives both dignity, identity, ease of use to every citizen, regardless of their socioeconomic status, right? So today, and that has allowed the digitalization of the business of a dudwala and a sabziwala, or a casual worker in beauty services, or your casual services provider in, say, carpenter, plumber, and so on as well, right? So it's not limited to people with a credit card, debit card, or necessarily in a certain kind of business. So India is already the leader in that. We are continuing to innovate, I think, as a industry and as a society on that front, and supported very actively, of course, by a policy regime that understands the benefit of public digital infrastructure. Now, let me come to public digital infrastructure. There is often discussion around the US model of development in the 1950s when highways were built. And that took production and citizenry to places and far-flung places in the country, which without those highways, and those highways were built by the government by them. Similarly, today, what is happening, whether it is with the UPI or with the ONDC or with the health mission, is digital highways are getting built. India has already leapfrogged twice, right? So we leapfrogged telephony directly into mobile telephony. We have leapfrogged payments, and I spoke about that. This is our third big leap forward in some ways. So it is the digital highways that are being built, which will allow any business, small or big, to ride on those highways without having to build your road first.
Right, right.
And hence it takes access to commerce and not just retail. Arvind mentioned that. It is logistics, it is food, it is everything. Right. It takes access to FPOs, it takes access to artisan groups, to your MSMEs, and of course, big companies. Nobody has to build a road now to drive on it first.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. Mr. Koshy, I'll come to you. Dr. Sharma, Mr. Agrawal, and Mr. Arvind Gupta mentioned about UPI and Gmail. If you look at these platforms, even Aadhaar, these are highly agile, scalable platforms. I mean, these platforms offer, especially Gmail and UPI, they offer a different kind of experience altogether. And if you go to some of the large platform in e-commerce space right now, they also offer a great customer experience once you are there on their platform, if you are registered either as a customer or as a merchant. I'm not taking the name. When we are creating a networking platform, which will be integrating a lot of points in the ecosystem, do you have any thought process around as to how you are looking at giving the kind of agility that UPI has offered, uh, that you ONDC should be replicating?
Thank you. Let me just look at the, you have raised a couple of issues, and the whole context can be sent by the fantastic speakers who came before me. So let me just add some of the critical points that you raised. One is that you said we have excellent platforms existing who are giving fantastic service which you and I use, which is very true. 5-star service they are. But do you know what percentage of people are using, whether it is on the seller side or on the buyer side? If you look at the buyer side, it is single digit penetration. In the seller side, that single digit is at nearer to 0. It means that 5-star service that is there is relevant to a certain segment of buyers and certain set of sellers. You look at the hotel, you have the 5-star, you have the 3-star, you have the 1-star. There are times when I go to 5-star because I can afford. There are times when you will go. I will also go to the shop, the guy on the street, and take one of his vada pav. So we need to, a market cannot be an exclusive domain for a particular kinds of buyers and particular kind of sellers. Market has to enable different cross-section of buyers and sellers to coexist in a disciplined fashion. So ONDC makes it possible. The buyer from whichever network he is there, he can access whichever kind of product and whichever kind of service that he wants. And similarly, any service provider or seller can make himself visible to all platforms, whether it is whatever kind of customer experience they're giving, they'll be able to access. That is the interoperability and the unbundling that our predecessors explained. Just adding a couple of more points there is that these two things together is going to bring about a complete change in the way the market is structured. Today in India as well as internationally, how is the market structure? It's about economies of scale, specifically in the digital world. But winner takes it all. Okay, well, that is because unless that economies of scale providing an end-to-end service limits the number of people who could come. In a sense, it is becoming, I was listening to some interesting talk that it is becoming techno-feudalism. Whereas this unbundling is enabling innovation and specialization, driving efficiency. So it is not just economies of scale. A good logistics provider can focus itself on their service because the rest of the people will make use of him. And the market is completely visible for him. A good product maker need not worry about who's going to bring him logistics and warehousing. He only needs to make here the catalog available to the network, which will be visible to the whole world. Today, if you look at the part, today, let's say an accounting software person wants to make all their clients exposure to the e-commerce, he has to worry about how to get the buyers. Tomorrow, he need not. He can just focus himself giving the catalog visible because all the other buyers would come. And that is the biggest impact this is going to bring. And that would happen, it gives an incentive for everybody to digitize. A lot of people know digitization help, small and medium enterprises. But how is it going to really help them in their day-to-day business? And this ONDC is going to help them in their sales. That is where they make their money. So that is where they have the highest incentive to digitize. And once they go into this digitization on where it is getting them the money, the natural other part will follow, improving the efficiency of the way in which they're offering. And that is going to create a digital footprint. This Firoz, Dr. Sharma, etc. said earlier, is that is the thought of the data that we are considering. Make that data be the right of every user to make use of it for his benefit and not on somebody else's benefit. And that is the kind of structural change that we are seeing.
Right, absolutely. Dr. Sharma, I'll come to you now. And especially, I would like to have your views on two things. What Mr. Koshy was saying especially on the customer experience part. Why UPI is so successful, why any other platform is so successful. Also because of the fact that the underlying IT infrastructure is very robust, agile, but even the front end is highly giving a different level of customer experience altogether. So your views on that. And second, your views especially on the fact that there are some of the article I was going through, so there is an element of criticism especially on the capacity part of the government, I mean the tech capacity within public sector organization to handle such a complex project. So one, on the customer experience part. Second, in your view, how this tech capacity within public sector could be addressed, and what role do you see here for public private partnership? So if you could add your views on these 2 points.
Thank you very much, I think, for both these issues. And I'll try to answer the second issue first, which is, the limitation of capacity in the government to create such systems. So let me put it this way, that what we are building, actually, we are building the broad highway. We are creating the language of digital commerce. UPI actually created the language of money transfer. That's what UPI is actually. Similarly, we are creating specifications, the language of digital commerce. The front-end apps, front-end platforms, they will continue to remain whatever they are. They can be platform, they can be specific applications. So, and similarly, so basically that's what we are doing. For example, in CoWIN also, we just created a broad, sort of API specifications. And we said using these APIs, any entity can just, sort of latch on to CoWIN platform. So Paytm can also offer booking and services to their people. So essentially, we are not building everything. Please understand. We are just building this core infrastructure, which is actually nothing but a set of specifications, a set of rules by which people will communicate. So that's number one. Number two, let's also understand the current problem of the digital, commerce world or any digital artifact world is the winner takes all, as Arvind said. What happens is that who remembers there is a platform called Orkut? Anyone of you remember that? So essentially, what has happened?
So we are all giving away our vintage if we say yes, we remember it. But shall we do?
Yes, Anjali. So basically, what is happening is because of this network effect, these platforms keep on getting bigger and bigger and subsuming every other platform. And therefore, finally, only one player remains, or at the best, two players remains. Now, this is actually an antidote to this monopoly kind of, development of monopolies. Currently, this kind of platform approach, promotes this monopolization because then, everybody is on WhatsApp. So that's fine. But WhatsApp cannot talk to the other platform, which is, I don't remember the names of those, Telegram and other kinds of things. You can't do that. But SMS, for example, whether you are on whether you have an application or not, SMS is now you can send SMS to your phone. I don't have to bother whether you are on WhatsApp or not. Only WhatsApp can talk to WhatsApp. So essentially, this interoperability actually is a very, very fundamentally, construct which completely changes the paradigm. If there was no interoperability, for example, then only Vodafone fellows will be talking to Vodafone. Only Airtel guys will be talking to Airtel. And tomorrow what will happen? Only Jio will remain in the market, or some other player will remain in the market. So this anti-monopoly part happens because of interoperability. So that's right. One part. So then the question is, do the government has the capability? The government is not taking more than what actually it has capability of. And secondly, people should stop worrying about the capabilities of the government. I think we have shown, digital public goods we have made, and I think they were all made in the government. Of course, it's a public-private partnership because there are a lot of experts also involved in the process. And we are certainly not going to all babus together, Suresh Sharma and Anil Agrawal, they are not going to make these applications. But babus will utilize these other talent and, we will make it happen. So that's number one. Right. What was your first question? I forgot the first question.
Customer experience part.
So customer experience will actually, once you have the entire ecosystem building applications, I'm very sure there will be a huge competition in the application builder also. There will be a whole new class of people. Currently, what is happening is that those guys who control the sellers, who control the buyers, who control the APIs, they are the ones who are building applications and user experience. You have seen the user experience of only Facebook. You have seen the user experience of only Amazon. But think of user experience when there will be hundreds of wonderful players and they will create wonderful applications. And we are not going to build that. The entire system is going to build that. Number one. Number two, also let me, some people question the feasibility, saying that currently the players in the market, how can you fight with them? It's not really a question of fighting with them, not at all. It's actually creating new market. It's expanding the market multiple times. That's the point which I think Mr. Koshy, Arvind Gupta and Anil, everybody made that point. Anjali also. Okay, by ultimately we are going to expand this market. So that is what is very, very important to understand. And if you remember, in UPI, Paytm did not join the UPI initially. Now Paytm had joined the UPI. So Paytm is also on UPI. So I mean, we are new, and we don't want to boast as to what will happen tomorrow. Nobody knows what will happen tomorrow. But I think we are very hopeful, and that I think we are building something which is worth building.
Absolutely. Before I come to you, Mr. Agrawal, Mr. Gupta was raising his hand. Mr. Arvind Gupta, would you like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say the technologist and Dr. R.S. Sharma was speaking, and I think it's important to understand the difference between SMS and WhatsApp, simply put, and that is the word of interoperability, which is defined by protocols. It's not that email did not exist before SMTP. There were email systems on IBM VAX 4000s, and they were internal. Novell had its own protocol. Everybody was, and I'm again, as Anjali said, we're all dating ourselves. This is 25, 30 years ago, that people could send messages internally inside an office to one computer to another. But when SMTP became mainstream, then you had the proliferation of email. Now today you have a world where nobody even imagines a world without email, for example, right? Or HTTP, which is the internet protocol, the browser protocol, right? So same thing. The big thing you have to understand, what is the ambitious nature of ONDC is we're setting up the commerce protocol. It is how a transactional protocol will happen in the future. And that's, I think, something that is a very, very different technology intervention. And I think not only just creating digital public goods, but I think India is setting the standards for the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mr. Agrawal, I'll come to you now. I think Dr. Sharma and other speakers have already spoken about the fact that why we need the platform, also the kind of customer experience you could expect, and also on the capacity part. I think Dr. Sharma has put it quite eloquently. Now, since we are building and it is being built and it has been proven, work is being done. Now, let me ask you, UPI, the kind of, experience, now nobody is talking about, access to bank, or 7 or 8 years ago, in every interview, we used to ask what is access to bank and how many saving on current account is there. So that has been completely democratized. We also see the GEM somehow doing same thing for government procurement. And from an experience point of view, the Passport Seva has completely redefined how do you deliver the government services to a common man, somebody who needs passport. In that light, what should be 2-3 key elements that ONDC, while setting up, must focus on in order to the ultimate thing that you want to achieve, we should be able to achieve?
Very nice question. Now, before I come to the question that you've just asked, I would like to add to what has been said on within the government and the kind of partnership that we're trying to build. So we are very clear that government knows nothing. We don't have the capacity to implement such tech projects. We are only trying to facilitate a particular direction that our ecosystem needs to take. And what we've done is, we are very conscious that government is not getting into a business. We are not creating a platform. No, we are not creating platform. We are only creating standards and protocols. I just want to repeat this again, because, as in the last 1.5 years, within the government, we have had a lot of brainstorming, and everybody was asking us, why is the government trying to get into e-commerce? And we said, we are not getting into e-commerce. We are only trying to get the best of what is available, best of standards that are available, open standards. Again, the point is open standards. We are asking the broader technical community to contribute to those standards. We are not saying this tech team which is implementing this knows everything. Not. We have some basic stuff which makes us feel that this is worth taking it forward, and then everybody is contributing. Now, today we have more than 100 companies, more than 100 startups. Now, Paytm is already onboarded onto ONDC, looking from their experience of UPI, they don't want to left behind. All best of the platforms are now joining ONDC because they feel that this is the right thing to do. From the from the government perspective, we are very clear. We wanted this ONDC as a company to focus on public good. And that is why it has been designed, it has been incorporated as a non-profit company. See, we could have incorporated as a profit-making company also. It is a non-profit company. Even when it is incorporated as a non-profit company, you see best of the companies in the country, right from financial institutions, banks, so many other institutions have actually committed more than about this entity. These are all experts in their own field. The way we have structured ONDC is that government has practically no control except for some strategic direction that this government may like to give. But otherwise, the entity has to absolutely, get the best of the talent from the market and get things done. We are also saying, it is about creating that confidence. I wanted to say that it is, of course, the company has to work on a startup mindset, but if you need to have government scale, then you need government support, right? You need to have that government support, but you have to have a startup mindset. And that will come with people like Koshy and all of those who are guiding us in this effort. When this advisory committee, most of the advisory committee members are here, they asked in the beginning, the second question was asked, have you learned from our mistakes, from our previous implementations of UPI, of Aadhaar, of COVID? Have you learned from those mistakes? So then, of course, there is huge experience available now in India of implementing such public digital infrastructure. We have enough experience. We've taken lessons from there, and we are reasonably hopeful of this being a successful thing. Of course, we are also conscious of the fact that this is not going to happen tomorrow. It'll take a couple of years, but this is something that will happen. You talk to the companies that are now interacting with our technical team, and the kind of excitement that they have needs to be seen to be believed.
Right. Absolutely. Mr. Sethi, would you like to add, especially on the part of some of the key elements that ONDC need to imbibe in order to replicate the success of some of amazing work in digital public good that India has done over the last decades?
Absolutely. I would add a couple of things to that. One, even if we take the UPI experience, it's about having the trust and the resilience of the system, which becomes very important. Today, even as we are seeing different models coming in, different applications getting created, you want to be sure that your money is safe over there. Now, when you come to commerce, you are actually getting into even a more complex situation where it is not just finance, it is not just exchange of money from point A to point B. It is also about ordering goods. It's also about receiving goods. So which people become part of the ecosystem? How is that trust maintained? How is the sort of certification and governance which happens around the ecosystem? What technology enablers can be created to put governing policy out there to manage and have the ecosystem working well? We nowadays hear a term called tokenized governance. So it need not be everything which is done physically managed and controlled, but a lot of it can be built into the ecosystem itself in the way it is controlled and governed. So I think these things will be important, because today when I'm going and purchasing something, I want to be sure that what I will get is coming from a trustworthy source. We have platforms today which talk about, this is confirmed or this is verified goods or whatever. So that is the sort of trust which will have to come into the ecosystem. So as you open market access, as you create interoperability, you need to make sure that the network participants, the people who are coming into the ecosystem, are thoroughly vetted, and there is comfort or confidence given to the buyers to be able to determine that they are playing in the right space.
Absolutely. And also the fact that now I'll go to Ms. Anjali Bansal. Also the fact that you need to trust in your system yourself also, and it has to be resilient, because we have witnessed in the case of UPI that initially there was some pushback from the large cards, especially because it was democratizing payment in such a way wherein it's really affordable. If I want to start an e-commerce portal today, 10 years back, possibly I was paying only 50,000 rupees as a guarantee money to get one particular gateway to do the transaction. But that is not the case anyway. I mean, you get all those things free of cost on the go, and it is easily available. Would you like to add anything on that, Ms. Bansal?
Sure. So as someone who invests in the startup ecosystem, I think I earlier talked about highways. So physical infrastructure. Now digital infrastructure also creates more access to new business models.
Right.
So Arvind mentioned new innovation. The innovation also gets disrupted. Continuous innovation, continuous disruption leads to better and better outcomes for individuals and society. So just like we saw a lot of new businesses getting created on the back of UPI rails, similarly, we expect new business models to emerge. Ease of setting up, say, a new e-commerce business or logistics or an FPO or a product creator. Because ONDC exists, it will be easier for them to just focus on their product and get it to market with a lot more ease. So like UPI led to many new businesses and startups getting created, a lot more value getting created. So democratization of new business creation will also happen. Right. Because there is ONDC.
Mr. Koshy, would you like to add something, especially on the part that if we have to compare between GEM and UPI, possibly I'll give more marks to UPI. That means there is some element of difference of platform, of trust, of the ecosystem, of onboarding. I mean, a lot of factors we can factor in. So when you are actually setting up, what are the key things that you as somebody who's heading this particular project, and what Mrs. Sethi said, the digital trust, what Mr. Gupta said, that the agility within the platform that is being set. What are the key elements that you are actually thinking that you must be imbibing in order to replicate some of the good work that we have done in technology space?
Thank you. Let me just connect some of the earlier points and sort of marry them and try to see how we are looking at the building up of ONDC. Let's ask a very interesting question to ourselves to make it light-hearted way. Do you know who made Taj Mahal? You will say Shah Jahan. But Shah Jahan didn't make. There was a set of fantastic engineers. So what it said, there was somebody who had a vision. And he identified all the best kind of people to come and work together. And that is at play that we have demonstrated as a country. We had visionaries like Dr. Sharma and the Milkani, bureaucrats like Anil, etc., coming together and said, we understand the challenges that is facing. And now let's find out the guys who can make it happen and come together. So that is the same drive of vision that we see at Interplay. We have a powerful advisory board of people like this who are working with fantastic techies and operations guys to make this work. And that's a learning that we demonstrated in UID. That's a learning that we demonstrated in UPI. And that's what we are. And because we are using similar kind of architectural principle, it is also adding a lot of possibilities. Look at, let's take the case GEM. GEM is what? It's a marketplace of many sellers where the government is procuring. Tomorrow, if the GEM make their platform ONDC compliant, which they are going to make, look at what is happening. All those sellers has a fantastic opportunity for a national market. And all those national buyers across the country have a very well verified GEM certified sellers that is there. Look at the power it is unleashing. And now take the next point. This means that anybody have now a national scale market. So what it is going to drive to innovation, earlier we said, even as somebody who's making a small product in some small town, selling it to all around, suddenly he realized that he can have a national market. So he could make it better, he could make it better product, better package. So we are driving the business opportunity for all across. So this is helping us to create what I call a national market. And the impact of that is not just on big business. Impact is on big business and small business. And collectively, it empowers India to take to the next leap of being the leader and not always trying to copy paste from somewhere else.
Absolutely. We're completely exhausted our time. So I'm giving last word to Dr. Sharma, especially on some of the lesson that we have learned from earlier platform we should not be missing while implementing ONDC. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I think everything which was to be said has been said. And I think I really don't need to add anything. I can only say this is an effort to democratize the digital commerce so that people do not have entry barriers and people do not have to be subjected to discretionary and discriminatory practices. People are not able to, because some of the players are really playing dirty in this space. They are copying, they are killing, they are acquiring. All these tricks have been applied in the past, and very unethical practices of platform becoming sellers themselves. They are platform becoming players. So if a referee becomes a player, then it becomes a difficult situation. So I think India is not only trying to solve the expansion of the market, it's also trying to solve some of the other issues which are related and other problems which have become quite visible in the past few years, because players have become very dominant in a single player market or two player market. And therefore, they feel that we can do whatever we want to do. So now this is what is happening, and we need to change that. And probably it's a small effort in that direction. Hopefully, this effort will bear fruits, and with I'm sure with the leaders like Mr. Koshy, who has had tremendous experience of a number of decades in this business, and other people joining him, Anil being there, I think things are going to happen. I'm very sure about it. I have been an extreme optimist in this space, and I'm very confident about the capability of the team which is actually leading this effort. So that's where I would like to end. Thank you very much for inviting me onto this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Thank you, Mr. Agrawal, Mr. Gupta, Mr. Sethi, Ms. Anjali Bansal, and Mr. Koshy for sharing your views, especially around the reimagining digital commerce in India with open network for digital commerce. I think you all spoke quite well, especially the kind of benefit that this particular networking platform is going to bring, and some of the things that we have learned from our earlier platform that we must imbibe into it. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful panelist.
Thank you very much, friends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation and valuable content. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now proceed further to the next session.